this, the 75th anniversary, we have gathered here today in unison with all Ukrainians in our homeland and in the diaspora to commemorate the innocent victims of the forced famine. This is the least we can do for our departed brothers and sisters, since it is our responsibility to ensure that the Holodomor will always remain in the minds of future generations. We must not forget that despite the loss of the churches, the clergy, the daily bread, and all sustenance or means to support their lives, these Ukrainians who loved the rich land that God gave them never lost their faith, their love, nor their hope in Him who is the author of all life. Imitating Christ Himself, they did not leave their land, nor run from their persecutors, but rather, as Isaiah said, like a lamb led to slaughter, he was silent and opened not his mouth. Oppressed and condemned, he was taken away. And who would have thought any more of this destiny? When he was cut off from the land of the living and smitten for the sin of his people. These humble Christians are the personification of living innocence. And innocence without blemish is a precious gift from God that no famine can erase from the face of this earth. It was God's gift that they in turn have given us. We dare not forget it, for this innocence is our victory over every evil and our ultimate salvation. Christian truth calls upon us to make efforts to spread the knowledge of this tragedy among our own people and also among non-Ukrainians. We all must be informed of this act of genocide in order that history may never be repeated and that this horrific act may never again be committed against any member of the human race. We must find the strength in our hearts to forgive those who played a role in this tragedy. Anger and injustice must not overpower Christian call to forgive. As Christians, we are people of hope. And although we cannot turn our back, and we can't turn the pages of history, we can still work towards a brighter future. Only faith, hope, and overwhelming love will help to build a worthy future and prevent the errors of the past. So let us pray in the words of the psalmist, that their souls dwell amongst good things, and that the memory extends from generation unto generation.
Сьогодні запрошується Федір Куляк, генеральний секретар Союзу українців Великобританії. Федір Куляк, Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain.
Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, if I may, I should like to begin by citing the prophetic words of Ukraine's most famous poet, Taras Shevchenko, written almost 100 years before the horrors of the 1932-33 Holodomor. No one knows them. No one will mourn them there sincerely. No one will recall them. Only the wind, quietly, softly, will still blow above them. Only dews of early morning with small tears will wash them. And the grandchildren, they're indifferent. In the introductory remarks to the memorial book Famine 33, Lydia Kovalenko elaborated on who those unknown victims were. We must not forget the bitter truth, she said. unto the grave where 7.5 million Ukrainian villagers lie, fell the best. Industrious, independent landowners, labelled as kulak saboteurs, perished without trace. Village tradesmen and artists, including the thousands upon thousands of naturally gifted individuals, all were lost forever. Rebellious descendants of the Cossacks, who could not accept the oppressive dictates of the authoritarian regime, were descended into the raw earth. A specific target of the GPU NKVD, the village intelligentsia, carrier of culture and the national Ukrainian idea, was brought to extinction. And all who were fit and able, talented, healthy in body and spirit, that were capable of thinking, that opposed force, that protested, that sought the truth, all were ruthlessly rooted out and destroyed. Orphaned children, sentenced to death by starvation, could not carry forth the teachings of their parents. Truly, the world of the Ukrainian village was turned upside down. End of quote. And in the midst of all this, whilst the world remained silent and Soviet Ukraine's borders closed, two exemplary British journalists risked their own lives and did everything within their powers to shine the light of truth through the darkness of lies propagated by Joseph Stalin's and successive Soviet regimes. I am, of course, referring to Malcolm Muggeridge and Gareth Jones, who, in spite of organised campaigns to discredit them, to their eternal honour, maintained their integrity publicly, wrote the truth about the systematic annihilation that they saw, and categorically refused to deny what they had witnessed personally. How truly fitting it is that 75 years on, and in this hall, we have the relatives of those two great men with us today. And how appropriate it is that the testimonies of Jones and Muggeridge of 75 years ago are today being sustained by governments worldwide. Just 1 month ago, the European Parliament passed a resolution which expressed sympathy and respect to those who died and described the horrors of 1932-33 as an appalling crime against the Ukrainian people and against humanity. And in this great country too, the land of Malcolm Muggeridge and Gareth Jones, a very tangible demonstration of the United Kingdom's cooperation in promoting the historical facts about the Holodomor and raising awareness of this atrocity has come this year when Prime Minister Gordon Brown agreed with the Ukrainian President Viktor Yushchenko that the United Kingdom would cooperate to promote remembrance and increase awareness of the famine. The Prime Minister has made it very clear that the United Kingdom will continue to support Ukraine's efforts to raise the Holodomor in other international fora. And the historic letters of support of the last few days from both the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary, and the very presence here today of Mr. Tim Hitchens as representative of Her Majesty's Government reaffirms that very sincere commitment. And we ask you, sir, to personally convey our gratitude for this, both to the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary. It's imperative that we work together in this common cause to prevent a similar atrocity from ever recurring again anywhere in the world. The truth must prevail, and in this regard, we fully support the European Parliament's resolution calling on the countries which emerged following the breakup of the Soviet Union to open up their archives on the Holodomor in Ukraine in 1932-33 to comprehensive scrutiny, so that all the causes and consequences can be revealed and fully investigated. To conclude, I would like to revert back and to slightly paraphrase the words of Shevchenko that I read out at the beginning, so that we may all walk away from this gathering with a very clear message in mind about the Holodomor and its victims. Let us ensure that everyone knows them. Let us ensure that everyone may mourn them sincerely. Let us ensure that everyone recalls them. And the grandchildren of that generation and of all nationalities, let us all ensure that they are not indifferent. Thank you. I now have the honour of inviting the Ambassador of Ukraine, His Excellency Dr. Igor Kharchenko, to make a special announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a special announcement to make now. I have been informed and asked to convey to this meeting that the President of Ukraine, Mr. Viktor Yushchenko, had decided to award posthumously with the national honors of Ukraine the two British journalists who were first to broadcast to the outer world the truth about the events which took place in the USSR in the early 30s, uncovered the brutal truths of Holodomor, the great famine in Ukraine. And the names of these journalists are those which had already been mentioned by Frederick Polak recently, Thomas Malcolm Magierich and Garrett Richard Bonjones. May their eternal memory be remembered by all generations to come. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to ask to be on this podium with me now Mr. Leonard Magierich, son of Malcolm Magierich. Минуло 75 років, але правду про ці події треба говорити, поки живі свідки, які пережили цю страшну трагедію. Голодомор не тільки статистика, а трагедія мільйонів людських життів. Отець Михайло Худорний, свідок Голодомору від імені тих, хто помер і тих, хто живий. 75 years on, and the truth still has to be told, while there are people who have personal experience of living through the famine, so that everyone understands that the Holodomor is not just a bare statistic, but a tragedy of millions of individual lives. Father Mikhail Holodomor speaks on behalf of those who died and those who lived.
Років вчора. Я ще пам'ятаю, як я ходив свого батька. Мені було 14